All right. Well, on that down note, let's get a couple more questions and get out of here. You really love to sing. Oh, God, I just set you up.
I love to sing about the moon and the June and the spring. I love to sing about the skies.
Well, let's see how you like to answer some questions. This one was sent to cornydrivethrough@gmail.com from Rowdy Roddy Rooster in St. John's, Newfoundland. I know in the past, wrestlers have hidden blades in their tights and in the tape on their wrists and fingers, but it seems incredible to me that guys actually hid blades in their mouths during matches. This practice seems dangerous and a little insane to me. Is this fact or fiction? If it is true, who were some of the names that hid blades in their mouths? And were there any mishaps, such as a wrestler actually swallowing a blade or cutting up his mouth?
I can't call chapter and verse on the names of people who did that. I can tell you, yes, it definitely is a fact. I never looked on it comfortably either, but part of it is, and there's no video on this podcast because we do radio here. But if I could show you, if you do a blade right, the way most guys used to do it, it is somewhat flat and can be put in between, like the guys that, you know, the tobacco pouches, a little between the cheek and gum, right? They'd put it between, or the bottom lip in there where the teeth are on the other side and keep it where you need it, or in between the cheek and gum or whatever. And Ray Stevens was noted for being able to get shot across the ring, do the upside down bump that he trademarked and did so well in the turnbuckle, go up sitting on top of the turnbuckle, hit his head on the post, and on his way back down, they said he'd take the blade out of his mouth and gig, so by the time he hit the ground, he was already bleeding. And I saw my old partner, Danny Davis, when he was one of the Nightmares, try to do that in Evansville, Indiana one night, and they ended up taking him to the hospital because he got about 40 stitches across top of his head. It was the blading while he was upside down that caused the issue. But, you know, that's... guys would put it in different places, and that's one. But then the thing is, when you've got it and it's not taped to your finger, which that's dangerous also, because I would have been freaked out about that, because then you're laying hands on somebody, and unless you've got the tape back over the cutting edge, then you're slicing and dicing them. But guys who would carry it loose would also, if they had it in their mouth and they spit it out and they used it, they'd have to put it away somewhere, and that would generally either be in their tights or in their opponent's tights. A lot of times you'd see after a guy's bleeding, he's on his knees, and the guy that's kicking the shit out of him is standing in front of him, punching him in the head. Everybody's looking at the punches to the head. The guy that's bleeding is sneaking his thumb and forefinger into the front of the guy's waistband of his tights to give him the blade. Or sometimes guys would put it in the top of the ring post. If the ring post didn't have a cap on it, then it would drop all the way down to the bottom. And then the ring crew sometimes would turn a fucking ring post upside down and 15 or 20 blades would fall out.
How do you feel about a handoff to a referee?
That's not bad. It's not a bad idea. It depends on how smooth the referee is. Bobby Eaton was always scared, and as much as he got juice, but he was always scared that people would see him get his blade off his wrist because he kept his taped to his wrist. So every once in a while, he'd have me hand it to him, or he'd have the referee, if he trusted him, you know, hand it to him. But then I always like, well, now everybody's going to be watching me. I'd have the blade in between my forefinger and my middle finger, and I'd put my hand flat down on the mat, and I'd lean over next to Bobby laying there like I was whispering something. And then when my hand would move and be gone, his hand would just scoop it right up or whatever, some cloak and dagger bullshit like that. But it just, you know, that was the thing, is you always wanted to try to make it as unnoticeable as possible. And some guys were wizards at it, and some guys were fucking horribly blatant, and you would just cringe, you know.
No, we had a lot of them in the Northeast. Albano, Bruno, When Jimmy Snuka, when they turned on him and he turned babyface right in front of the camera.
See, that's the thing. Those guys, and honestly, I mean, Albano was drunk and he was crazy. And I loved him, but he was drunk and he was crazy when he did that shit. But a lot of the guys in the Northeast, they were used to the big buildings where the majority of people were so far away that you could get away with shit. And you thought, and you know, it turns out, honestly, you couldn't get away with it. You just thought you were, but they would get that habit. Whereas the guys that, you know, were used to the smaller buildings and people being up close, you know, a 5,000 seat or less building, you know, you got a lot of eyes on you and you need to be smart. And every once in a while when I would need to do it, I would either go underneath the ring for just a second or, you know, whatever the case, like just to try to avert people's eyes from what I was doing, because it was like I had a neon sign on my head. But
what you just described is kind of the beginning of the McMahon style of wrestling, because in the southern cities and really in various territories all across the country, you had a lot of small towns and a lot of towns where guys couldn't get away with things because people were watching intently. But the McMahon style, which is all about performing for the rafters, it was almost every major city they were in, you had to perform like that.
Yeah, and actually, that probably is why that the most dedicated fans in the Northeast were the first ones to be smart. I mean, there's other factors also, knowing the guys personally and being around for a long period of time, but you could pick up a lot of shit if you were in the front row at Madison Square Garden or the Boston Garden or the Philly Spectrum or whatever on a regular basis in those days. You know, just from seeing the films, I can say, well, people could see through a lot of that shit.